It was last Wednesday that you had this attack in San Bernardino, California, and the perpetrators killed 14, I think, and wounded 21, something along those lines. They were both of Pakistani origin, and authorities right now are continuing to work on trying to figure out whether this was a terrorist attack or whether this is just this was a workplace event or an incident. And they're not 100% sure as far as that is concerned, but 19 days previous to that attack, there was something that the authorities knew 100% sure it wasn't a terrorist attack. See, it was on the 13th, Friday the 13th of November, between 9 p.m. and midnight, that you had 6 individual but coordinated attacks on the people of Paris. And it left, I believe it was 368 injured and 130 dead. ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, acknowledged that it was them who perpetrated this attack, and they said that they did it based upon the idea of retaliating for the French bombing Iraq, bombing their positions in Iraq. And these attacks, I submit to you, kind of remind us of previous attacks and previous wars. You see, America's been in a number of wars. Some of them a little more controversial, maybe like Vietnam or Iraq. But one war that is not very controversial at all is World War II. That I think tomorrow is the 74th anniversary. It marks the 74th anniversary of the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor. And that drew the Americans, the U.S., into a war that the U.S. frankly did not want to have anything to do with. Americans were thinking World War I was the war that was supposed to end all wars and consequently didn't want to go into war anymore. But the issue is that Hitler and his allies, Italy, Spain, Japan, and Russia for a while, they all had this ideology that they wanted to rule the world and dominate and impose their ideology upon the world. And they were willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. Brutal atrocities took place. Now, those brutal atrocities were numerous, but there was just a couple that I submit to you this morning. One was slavery. You know, I knew of, kind of in a vague sense, the comfort women, the Chinese comfort women, but I really didn't completely understand about what was going down until I was doing research for this message. And here's the deal. The Japanese invaded China, and they captured a number of provinces and territory in China. And the Japanese government didn't want pillaging and raping going on by their soldiers towards the Chinese. So what they did was they set up these comfort stations. They set up these comfort stations to take care of their soldiers. So they got 200,000 Chinese women and they put them in these comfort stations for the Japanese soldiers to rape. Now, if anybody can figure that one out, as far as the logic of that one, please let me know, because that doesn't make no sense to me. That don't make no sense, dog. Everybody understands and realizes the Holocaust, the slaughter of the Holocaust, where you had 6 million plus Jews exterminated in an amount of time like 6.5 years or something along those lines. And these numbers are so big, they kind of get us, you know, I can't associate 6 million people. Let me try to break it down for you and try to give you a little bit better handle as far as a word picture that might help out. How many are going to watch the Bills lose or mean play today? Okay, yeah. So is anybody going to the Ralph? Anybody going to the Ralph? Okay. Wise investment, or lack of thereof. Anyways, think of it along these lines. The Ralph holds 70, 75,000, right? Something along those lines. Think of the Ralph filled with people. And over the course of a month, all those people getting killed. And then think of the Ralph being filled the next month with people, and over the course of that month, all those people getting killed. And think of it the same the next month, and the same the next month, and the same the next month, and the same the next month for 6.5 years. That gives you a little bit of a handle as far as what the Holocaust was all about. It cost us, U.S. lives, U.S. military men and women, over 400,000. But 70 years ago, we and our allies enjoyed victory over the Axis forces. And that is supposed to be great, and it is great. But today we find ourselves in another war. And although the enemy is very different, we find a lot of similarities in methodologies and ideology. I submit to you that radical Islam has many of the same mindsets and also methods in the way they go about doing things. See, America never wanted to get into the war on terror. They were drew into the war on terror by the 9/11 attacks, right? And it was based upon the idea of the same ideology. Radical Islam wants to impose their views, impose their ways of going about, their ideology upon the world. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. Now, we don't see it to the same scale as World War II, but I submit to you that we can see the same methodologies with radical Islam. As far as slavery is concerned, the Yazidi people are located in northern Syria. And as ISIL captured towns and villages, what they would do is they kill the Yazidi men, and then they would capture and round up the Yazidi women to become sex slaves for the soldiers. How do we know this? Because there was a Yazidi woman who escaped her captors, and she told the world what was going down. I heard an interview with this woman, and she described her systematic rape along these lines. She was tied to a bed, and there was an ISIL soldier that came in, prayed to Allah, raped her, then prayed to Allah again as he left. And what it does is it really gives us an understanding of the warped and skewed mentality of this, because the Caliphate, the leaders of ISIL, believe that the Quran gives them not only latitude, but it actually promotes the idea that they rape the heathen women. Yazidi people are not Muslim, nor are they Christian, but they are human, and they deserve better. And as far as the slaughter is concerned, once again, it's not to the scale of the the Holocaust by the Germans, but I would offer to you and submit to you that it's just as brutal, if not more brutal. February of this year, 21 Coptic Christians were beheaded on a beach in Libya because they failed to convert to Islam. In April, another 30 were beheaded on a beach in Ethiopia for the same reason. And really what this all brought about is based upon this. ISIL utilized these beheadings for propaganda videos that they put on the internet so that they could try to promote their ideology and to gain more fighters. So, where am I going with all this? What I submit to you is this idea that the war on terrorism is a righteous war. It's a just war. It's a just war. I think that's pretty much without question. But here's the question. Can we learn anything from a just war? Can we learn anything from a just war? And I submit to you that we can learn two things. Both of them are counterintuitive. They go against their very grain. They go against their very way of thinking and viewing. The first one is revelation. The first one is revelation. And the revelation is, can God reveal to his people a message through an evil messenger? Can God do that? Habakkuk was a prophet in Judah. Okay, so here's the deal. Here's what's going on. You have two kingdoms set up. The northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Okay? Now, Habakkuk was a prophet in Judah right around 600 BC. But in the northern kingdom of Israel, that pretty much got destroyed and conquered in 722 BC by the Assyrians. Now in 605 BC, I'm doing a little history for you, okay? 605 BC, you have the Babylonians who are the guys who conquered the Assyrians. All right, so the Babylonians are the big bully on the block. They are looking at Judah and Jerusalem, and they're saying to themselves, "Oh, I want to conquer those guys." And so what's going down is this. Habakkuk is a prophet. He speaks for God to the people of Israel, but also he speaks for the people of Israel to God. And so what goes down is this. He asks a very pointed question. Let's read that. God, you're from eternity, aren't you? Holy God, we aren't going to die, are we? God, you chose the Babylonians for your judgment work. Rock solid God, you gave them the job of discipline? But you can't be serious. You can't condone evil. So why don't you do something about this? Why are you silent now? This outrage. Evil men swallow up the righteous and you stand around and watch. You're treating men and women as so many fish in the ocean, swimming without direction, swimming but not getting anywhere. Will you let this Babylonian fisherman fish like a weekend angler, killing people as if they're nothing but fish? And then God answered, write this, write what you see. Write it down in big block letters so that it can be read on the run. This vision message is a witness pointing to what's coming. It aches for the coming. It can't hardly wait, and it doesn't lie. If it seems slow in coming, wait. It's on its way. It'll come right on time. You see, what's going down is this. God goes on to tell Habakkuk that the Babylonians are going to be destroyed. They're going to be wiped out. There's going to be no Babylonians left. But the Israelites will endure because they're God's people. And we can see that. How many know, you ever heard of Babylon as far as, is there a country called Babylon here? No. But is there a country called Israel? Yeah. Okay, so pretty true of that. What's going down is this. And it's important to understand what took place in Judah at that point in time, because it can inform us at this point in time. See, in Judah at that point in time, they had mass worship of all these different foreign gods. Yeah, they worshiped Yahweh, but they worshiped Moloch in the valley of Ben Hinnom. They actually burned their kids just outside of Jerusalem. And they worshipped Asherah. They had a pole right on the Temple Mount, right in the temple. They worshipped Baal, Chemosh. All of these foreign deities they were worshiping as gods. So they weren't solely focused on Yahweh, the God of Israel. That's one. The second thing that was going on in Israel is the powerful were all over those who were vulnerable. They oppressed those who were vulnerable. They stamped them down and squashed them into the ground. And the prophets came time and time and time again saying, you're doing the wrong thing, you're doing the wrong thing, you're doing the wrong thing. I ask you, does it sound somewhat familiar to our situation we have here? Is it possible that God might be speaking to people who are his people, who are not quite so evil, but have done wrong, through people who are all about evil? Can God be speaking to us through Muslim terrorists? Counterintuitive, something to think about. The second thing I offer to you is the idea of temptation. This is where Jesus offered some really rough words. See, the temptation is when you get injured, you want to retaliate. Jesus tells us some different words. Best message he ever preached. You've heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you're sued in court, let your shirt be taken from, and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask. Don't turn away from those who want to borrow. You have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. Once again, when you get injured, you're going to want to retaliate. But what Jesus is saying is this. If you retaliate, that is inviting a response. And it goes on, it goes on, it goes on, like a ping pong match. But there's something else that Jesus says in here, okay? You have to read into it. You have to be a careful reader. He says that don't retaliate if it's you who are injured, if it's a personal injury. If it's your neighbor who's getting hurt by the big bully in town, protect, help. Because loving your neighbor often takes the form of protecting your neighbor. So this whole idea of protection being defensive as opposed to offensive as far as retaliatory. That's what really Jesus was saying. And this is borne out by this in a very pragmatic way. On Friday, I was listening to Charlie Rose. How many know who Charlie Rose is? There's a few, okay. He's an interviewer, okay. He interviews some really cool dudes and ladies as well. He, on Friday, was interviewing this guy, Michael Morial, who was a former deputy director of CIA. And he was interviewing him regarding this whole business of terrorism in the San Bernardino and all that jazz. And he asked Morial, what is the greatest threat posed by ISIL towards the United States? And Morial offers 4, but for the sake of brevity, and also to try to stay on task here, I offer to you 1. He said, if the U.S. experienced a Paris-like attack on U.S. soil, there's going to be a groundswell of people, citizenry, who want to retaliate, who want to get boots on the ground in Syria and Iraq to kick butt. And what that's going to do is that's going to subvert and undermine the idea of diplomacy and trying to garner a coalition to go against ISIL. He went on to say, there's 4 major players in the Middle East right now. The U.S. and Russia are the 2 international players. Iran and Saudi Arabia are the 2 regional players. And all of these are pulling in different directions right at this point in time. But there's diplomatic talks going on to try to get us all pulling in the same direction, because you not only have to defeat ISIL, you have to offer something in the way of an alternative government that offers stability so that you don't have the instability that breeds ISIL-like radicalism. And if the U.S. went on their own and unilaterally attacked, that would undermine that coalition building. Makes sense. Makes all kinds of sense. It's very pragmatic. Jesus is a pragmatic guy. So protection is great. But the issue is how do we get to peace? And I submit to you, the only way you get to peace is by practicing and praying for grace. We can see that in a story in the Bible. Let's read it. Now the king of Aram was at war with Israel. After conferring with his officers, he said, I will set up my camp in such and such a place. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing that place because the Arameans are going down there. Time and again, Elisha warned the king so that he was on his guard in such places. This enraged the king of Aram. Then he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there, and they went by night and surrounded the city. As the enemy came down toward him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, strike this army with blindness. So he struck them with blindness, and as Elijah had asked, and he led them to Samaria. After they entered the city, Elijah said, Lord, open the eyes of these men so they can see. Then the Lord opened their eyes, and they looked, and there they were, inside Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he asked Elijah, "Shall I kill them, my father? Shall I kill them?" "Do not kill them," he answered. "Why would you kill, or would you kill those you've captured with your own sword and bow? Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink, and then go back to their master." So he prepared a great feast for them, and after they had finished eating and drinking, he sent them away, and they returned to their master. So the bands, notice, so. 2 letters, really important word. As a result of that action, the bands from Aram stopped raiding Israel's territory. Here's the story. Elisha is a prophet just as Habakkuk was the prophet. He was prophesying, he was working for God a little bit earlier in Israel's day and age, okay? But there was a war going on between Aram and the northern kingdom of Israel. Elijah's given the heads up because he's kind of got God noise in his head. He's given the heads up to the Israelite king. The Arameans are going to be here and there and the other way. And the Arameans wanted to ambush the Israelites, and they couldn't do it. So the Arameans were saying, "We got to get this Elijah dude. This guy is screwing everything up in our campaign, military campaign." So they go after Elijah. And Elijah, through the grace that he offered to them, because they wanted to kill him, Elijah offers them grace in the form of a meal. How many people want to give a turkey dinner to their enemy? Not many. They changed the way they went about doing things because of the grace. That's hard. That's some heavy lifting. That's not easy stuff. So, takeaway, the war on terror and protecting oneself is completely legitimate. Completely legitimate. But if you're really looking for peace, you got to practice the heavy lifting associated with just offering grace. When you, with all your being, want to just retaliate. The story I offered regarding Elisha, and it's easy enough to just get a concise story in the Bible and go, "Oh, that's nice, that's Bible story," and stuff like that. I know we're going to go over, but it's really important because I'm telling you straight up, I can prove it by history. I can prove the premise by history. We talked about World War II. I want to talk to you about World War I as well. Because I had mentioned World War I is the war that was supposed to end all wars. But I will offer to you this, that World War I and the conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, which was the treaty which the two sides signed to stop World War I, set up World War II. The Treaty of Versailles was punitive. By punitive, what I meant was the French, British, and the Allied forces were going to exact a toll, war reparations they called it, from the Germans. So the Germans had to write checks every year for war reparations to the French, to the British, what have you, okay? And that, coupled with the global depression of the 30s, set up the Nazis. Because it completely destabilized Germany. You saw this hyperinflation in Germany. I don't know, some of the people who are older in the congregation might be remembering some video where you see a German going down with a wheelbarrow full of paper money, marks, to buy a loaf of bread. That was the hyperinflation in Germany. And that set up the radicalism, the destabilization of Germany, which allowed the Nazis to get into power in Germany, okay? Which began World War II. Now, World War II ended very differently than World War I. Does anybody remember the Marshall Plan? The Marshall Plan was America opening up its checkbook to Germany, to Japan, to the Axis forces to rebuild Europe, creating a stability in Europe that allowed peace to flourish. Now, it cost America tremendously to pony up the dough for the Marshall Plan. It cost a boatload of dough for us to do that because we just got done with a war. So we had to go into further debt to rebuild. But I submit to you that that allowed peace to take place and that there wasn't a World War III right on the heels of World War II. I think there's something to be said for that. I think Jesus knew that. Why don't you join me in prayer, please? Father, these are tough words. Because in one vein, you just, man, there's just evil. Just evil people rolling around this world. People who are completely sold out to the evil of the evil one. And when we get hurt by those people, it's the normal reaction is to return the hurt. But we also know that there's just no way it's going to happen. We're not going to destroy it because it seems like every leader you kill, two of them spring up. So I just pray and ask that in some way, shape, or form, that you would help us to rise above that instinctual level in which we want to just retaliate. Lord, I just pray that whatever you might have in the way of message for us, we might take to heart. We thank you for absorbing the evil that you absorbed on the cross so that we might have a taste of the goodness of you. And we just pray that in response to your love that we might offer some grace and love to other people who don't deserve it. Just out of responsiveness to you offering that love to us when we didn't deserve it. We thank you for starting it all out. We just pray that we can continue it. It's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.